Hi, welcome to the second Debt for Climate podcast, and we are still covering the fourth international conference on financing for development, which will take place in Seville from June the 3rd, from the 30th of June, sorry, to the 3rd of July 2025. And today we have an amazing table because we have the whole core team of Debt for Climate. And I'm really, really happy that everyone is here because you have no idea how tough it is to get all these people together. Even if they work so much so closely, it's actually difficult to have them sitting down to for a chat all together. So what is the International Conference on Financing for Development? Well, it is a United Nations conference which is set to prepare how countries will finance their essentially their preparation for climate change, right? So there is a climate crisis and there is a debt crisis at the same time. How do we face climate change and the climate crisis together, right? And so Global North and Global South have very different answers to that. And today we will have the insights from organizers at Debt for Climate on this specific question. Now, um, I think I will introduce the guest right away, and we will start with Ali, our first speaker. Alicia, hello. Alicia is the coordinator for Abya, which is Latin America in uh, the native word. Alicia, what language is the word Abya?
That's a good question. I don't remember exactly right now, but yeah, it's from one of the many indigenous languages that existed in what is now Latin America before colonization. So it's usually used to describe like the whole continent. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a word that I heard used a lot, and I would like very much to know a bit more about where it's coming from. We also have Raouf. Raouf, hello. How are we doing?
Hello, hello. I'm doing okay. I'm fine. Thank you.
How is the preparation going for FFD4? Are you ready?
Can you repeat
How
again? Sorry?
how is the preparation going for the conference?
Ah, well, more or less it's going okay. We've been here following a lot the convoy going to Gaza, but they stopped them in Libya and
Oh,
now so the whole
yes.
situation now is focusing on this, but instead of that, yeah, we're okay. We're still fighting. The situation in Tunisia is getting little by little hard. We're trying to keep the democracy. We'll try, but all is good, I hope. Yeah.
So many fights all together, right? So many things all together. Um, Next, I think I will introduce Scarlett. Hello, Scarlett, from so many places at the same time, right? From you live in France right now, but you are originally from Romania, correct?
Yes, that's correct. Hi, Antoine. Hi, everyone who's listening. Welcome to our podcast.
How was your day?
Busy. I think like this is the fourth call in a row without a break. Like I'm trying to eat in betweens when people are not asking me questions or when I don't have to speak. So it's been busy and it's very hot now in the south of France. We are constantly in a heat wave during the day and storms by night. So climate crisis, it's here. And
Mhm.
people in the global north can actually see it because for the global south, climate crisis was there and was aggressive way before.
Of course. Thank you, Scarlett. Um, we have Lorraine next. Hello, Lorraine,
Hi,
from the U
Antoine.
from the UK,
Yeah,
coordinator for
from the
Europe and the
Empire of
UK,
Evil.
right?
Evil. Sorry,
The
Antoine.
Empire of Evil, is it? Would you describe it that way?
I think I would, with the amount of colonization that the
Mhm.
Great Britain has done. So yeah, I'm based in the UK, and how has my day been? Very similar to everyone else on this call. It's really frantic as we lead up to the Finance for Development conference, with so many meetings to be plugged in on what's happening at the conference. Also, all of the mobilizations that are taking place. So it is really hectic at the moment and quite difficult to keep on top of. But I'm happy to be on the podcast that you've organized, Antoine. Thank you.
Well, thank you for coming. Thank you all for coming. And we will start with the first questions for Ali, actually. So, Ali, let's get straight to business. You will intervene in person at the main conference, right? Representing Debt for Climate and Abya. Um, you are an expert in this. You are our policy expert, one of our few policy experts. Let's ask some very basic questions for our complete understanding. What is the debt situation in the global south? Ali.
Okay, yeah. So first with the debt situation, I think like this story comes from decades ago. Like debt was essentially inherited after colonialism. Many countries, when they got independent, inherited debts from colonial regimes, and the people had to pay for it. And this continued until today. Also, what happened in the 70s and the 80s was that there were dictatorships, for example, in Abya. And by the way, Abya comes from the Kuna language. It's an indigenous language from Panama and Colombia, or territories now known as Panama and Colombia. But well, in Abya there were many dictatorships that were backed by you know who. So these dictatorships had loans from the IMF, and then when the countries had democracy again, they inherited these debts. So we need to do this. Well, I mean, we need to first learn about this context because this means that these debts are illegitimate, like much of the debt situation in the global south, which is now a debt crisis, as it was. I mean, there was a debt crisis in the 80s, there's a debt crisis now, especially in some countries more than others. And many of these debts are illegitimate. We should not be paying them instead of like public services, for instance. And also, the IMF, the World Bank, they have this way of classifying countries according to their how sustainable are their debts. And countries like mine, for example, are in a good debt situation,
Which
quote
is
unquote good
Peru,
debt
right?
situation.
You
Peru,
mean
yes,
Peru.
yes.
Hmm.
Peru, yes. We are supposedly in a good debt situation in comparison to, for example, Argentina, but that's actually not true. I mean, even if we are in a sort of good debt situation, we are still paying more for debt than for climate action, than for water and sanitation, and a lot of other essential services that warranty human rights. So you can imagine how the situation can be for countries that are in an overtly debt crisis, in which the IMF says, okay, this is definitely not sustainable. And this is an issue that, even if it's like from the financial system, it's not very easy to see it on a daily basis. It's not really now on the political agenda as it was on the 80s. So it's like a hidden enemy, and and that's where our work is important. I mean, we need to make this debt crisis something like so something that people can talk about it on a daily basis. Like we have a debt crisis in our country. That's why we don't have well-funded health systems. We don't have sustainable food systems, water and sanitation. Everything's getting privatized. I mean, many of the issues that we have from different areas can be linked to the debt situation in our countries, and of course from region to region, from country to country, across the global south, it can vary. But But yeah, basically that's the colonial trap, as we call it on the pro climate, the colonial trap that prevents us to spend money on where it's needed and from where our people want to spend money. Because many times it's like these international financial institutions saying you need to pay your debts. That's your priority. But for the people's priority, of course, we don't want that. We want the money to be from our taxes to be allocated for healthcare, for climate action, from several other
Okay.
things work.
You mentioned
Mhm.
a good point here, which is something like the second big element of the Debt for Climate uh, campaign, organization, movement, right? Which is climate. So why is climate change impacting the global south more? And why does it have a worse effect on the global south than the global north?
Yeah. Well, firstly, looking back into time, first that we are not responsible of this crisis. However, we have very biodiverse, well, we have a lot of ecosystems that are fragile to the climate crisis. For instance, in Peru, we have the glaciers and we have a coast. So like I mean, rising sea levels will affect us, especially affecting coastal communities. Um, and also the glaciers, I mean, they are melting. That means less fresh water for us. And this sort of like I mean, these scenarios happen in many other global south countries. For example, in Abiyala, most of the countries are mega biodiverse, and all of this biodiversity is dying, is getting lost, and the ecosystems are also getting lost and being affected due to the climate crisis that is happening. Same is happening in Africa, same is happening in Southeast Asia, in the big forests they have, and it's not our fault, and definitely not the fault of the communities that live there in and that are the land defenders as well.
Scarlett?
Yeah, I will add on that the countries in the global south are more affected because of years and years of exploitation that, as Ali said, fragilize the ecosystems. And this is a practice that's happening everywhere, even at the periphery of Europe, in Eastern European countries. Like we saw after the capitalism arrived, that they came and they start massive deforestation so they can have their agro-business booming, and those companies were all foreign companies. So because of that, now 47% of the whole territory of the country is in process of desertification, very aggressively. And the scientists say that by 2050, that will be similar as Sahara.
Which
Uh,
country? Which country?
in Romania. So this is a practice that I've been looking because I'm a farmer, right? And I'm coming from a farmer background, and I've been looking in this practice, and it happened in many other countries. In the Amazon with deforestation, in Indonesia for the palm oil. It's just like same model, no?
Alicia?
Mhm. Yes, and I think Scarlett mentioned these very important links to extractive industries. In Spanish, it's we call it extractivismos, but I see there is not a exact translation to English, but let's say it extractivism. So many times when people speak about climate change, there's not, I mean, at least from what I've seen in some forums or in some spaces, there is not this direct linkage to the extractivism, because extractivism is of course linked to the capitalist system, but it's very important to also take in mind that it's not just like the CO2 emissions and the fossil fuels what's causing climate change, but the actual extraction of these and resources, and for example, activities like Scarlett mentioned, like agribusiness that are massively polluting the environment. So I think it's very important to also make that link. I mean, climate change and extractivism, they're twins. They work together. They fuel each other. Mhm.
Let's lead up to the next question here, um, because we talked about debt, financial debt that is owed, at least on paper, by the global south to creditors in the global north. But a very important concept in the fight that we are in is the concept of climate debt. Alicia, can you explain that? Climate debt.
Yeah, so the climate debt, it's sort of like it challenges the status quo because it's the debt that the global north owes to the global south due to the climate crisis they have caused. I mean, we're constantly paying this financial debt, which is illegitimate, but they are not paying their climate debt in the form of reparations. And each time there is any attempt for them to pay, that or that well at the COPs, for example, any attempt for them to pay what they the minimum of their climate debt, they always find ways to say there's no money. We can get the private sector to not even pay, but to make profit of the climate crisis. And yeah, basically that's it. It's like shifting the narrative. It's like you are the ones that owe us for all the years of exploitation, colonialism, climate crisis, and it's important to talk about it, but also, and I was talking once with an expert on debt, and it's also important to think about how to actually quantify it, and also not just looking at the states. I mean, like the states from the global north, but also at the companies. For example, how much do these oil companies owe to the global south in climate debt?
And that would be an enormous number because they pollute a lot. Is that it?
Yes, of course. I mean, they are the ones mostly responsible for all of that, but we are the ones that are losing our lives and our ecosystems.
Now, there is a proposition that is on the table at the UN, at the United Nations, and that will be the subject of a lot of talks at the conference. And that is debt swaps, especially debt for climate swaps. So I mentioned that before in the previous podcast. Debt for Climate as an organization has nothing to do with debt for climate swaps. We have a branding problem, right? It's the same name. They use the same word, the same words, the same name as us, but it's for something completely different. And we don't know if it's like by chance or random or not. But whether, regardless, we need to talk about them. Like what are debt for climate swaps or debt for nature swaps, Alicia? Please.
Mhm. So yes, I remember like Petro speaking about debt swaps, debt for climate swaps at the COP 27, which was my first one. And then I remember looking at the Debt for Climate demonstration at the same COP, and I thought, oh, they're like promoting the same thing that Gustavo Petro is promoting. But then I realized not, it's more for debt cancellation, and yeah, that's how I got to learn about Debt for Climate. But yeah, and yeah, what you mentioned is an important issue because we always need to tell people, no, we are not for debt swaps. We are actually super against that. Um, and why? Because I think that over the last years, much of this is also thanks to Gustavo Petro from Colombia. The links between debt and climate were well established at the UN. Before, maybe we haven't talked much about it as we do now. I mean, leaders know about this link. With a lot of debt, we cannot have climate action. The issue is that they are proposing debt swaps, which is changing part of your debt, not all, but part of your debt for climate action. And debt for nature swaps is changing part of your debt for biodiversity protection. And this is very problematic because, one, these are processes that are not transparent. I mean, they are negotiated between the country and and it can be either another country, an NGO, a private sector, to do the climate action or to protect biodiversity. But it is not done in consultation with the communities that are living in the land that is to be protected from climate change or to protect biodiversity there. So it's not transparent, it's not participatory, it does not solve the debt crisis. I mean, it's nonsense to put this as a solution for the debt crisis because it wouldn't solve it either. It's actually a way of greenwashing because companies can actually do their green capitalism here, saying, okay, we'll protect the nature. So we will go there and plant a lot of trees that may not be according to the local ecosystem, and that will cause many trouble. So because they don't even know the territory, they do everything without consulting with the people that live there. So they do whatever they want, and it's many times wrong, like wrong. They use it for profit. And what is more is that this is legitimizing illegitimate debts. The things I mentioned before, like debts from dictators, debts from colonialism, debts from corruptions, and then we have this big debt. And if we swap it, it's like saying, okay, it's our debt, and we're going to swap it. But we should not swap it. We should repudiate it because it's not our debt. And that's why we are promoting this year debt audits as a way to determine and recognize these illegitimate debts and not fall into these traps from the elites that tell us at the UN that we should do debt swaps. Unfortunately, the debt swaps proposals have been pushed forward not only by global North countries, but also by global South countries. Maybe because they haven't explored other options, more revolutionary options, as Thomas Sankara did decades ago, and they're just feeling okay. I mean, this can be it, but it's not, and it's the duty of the social movements to also say we do not want debt swaps. We want debt cancellation, debt repudiation. These are not our debts. We should not pay it.
So you mentioned debt audits. How are they an alternative to debt swaps?
Mm-hmm. Yes, so debt audits, it's a mechanism in which social movements can lead on this, and they can determine how illegitimate their debts are. They have to like join and evaluate, like, for example, set a time frame of the debt cycle, and decide, okay, we are evaluating the debts from the last 30 years, let's say, and then ask for information through to the ministries of economy or to the central bank of their countries, the national authorities that can have information on the debt contracts, on how on the loans and all of this, and to check, like, if it follows the legal, both national and international legal frameworks or not. If they were done through corruption, if they were, I mean, there are many financial maneuvers they have to just like make this also a shady process, the financial institutions. So it's basically evaluating how the debt was acquired, in what conditions, for what purposes, and and then saying, okay, this is not legitimate at all, we should not pay it. And not just that, because these debt audits can also be comprehensive, which means they do not only tackle the contracts and the financial transactions, but also learn, okay, what was the impact of these debts on their territories? Were there loans to, for example, finance a mega project that affected indigenous communities in a country? And when you start like joining the dots between the debt, whatever happens at the financial level, and what is happening at the territories, and linking it with the struggles of land defenders, then you can see the cycle better. You can see how this step that may seem like something far away has an effect on the real world, on the ecosystems, on the territories. And I think that's very important, very useful to do this, and this can unite many social movements, because we also need to think that debt is not only a thing that should be taken care of by economists, by fancy economists, many times white male, with a lot of degrees. I mean, this is something that social movements, that people, normal people that live not only in urban but also rural areas, can engage in and can question it and challenge it. And actually, this has happened in the past in Ecuador in 2008, because before that, social movements mobilized, like for example, the ecological indigenous feminist movement mobilized, asking for a debt audit, for a citizen debt audit. And when Correa became president in 2008, he listened to the social movements, and enable the conditions for having a citizen debt audit with the willingness of the government to help, because of course many of this information for a debt audit needs to come from the, as I mentioned, the central bank ministries. So information needs to flow to the people that are doing the audit, and it's very important that, I mean, that synergy, that like the bottom up from the social movements and the top down from a government that was aligned to social movements at that time, and they managed to do the debt audit, and they saved a lot of money, like millions of dollars, on illegitimate debt that then it could be redirected to public services. So this is a very important example that happened in Abiyala, and we are hoping that this can be replicated in other countries too, to challenge the debt system.
Ralph, let's talk about Africa, right? And you have a direct experience with many groups in Africa. So let's start with a question here, a basic question about debt for climate in Africa. What does it mean what is it like to be a debt for climate activist in Africa? And why do people join this movement, join our movement?
Actually, the answer is gonna be like, how do I feel? Because each person have his own way, but the common thing that we have, our activists in Africa, the feeling we have when we join that proclaim is that we are fighting for our liberation and we are fighting for our independence. And like so far, we're seeing that our country is struggling, and we're seeing it very clear that being indebted make us like unable to make any decision. We don't have the right to make any step or anything. So for us in that for climate, the members are trying to fight for themselves. Like we're joining the movement, believing that by attacking the debt, by canceling the debt, we will make our own sovereignty. So in our country, we're seeing different government. Africa is very big. We have a lot of countries, a lot of difference, but the common thing that we're all indebted, we're all having this imperialist, or we're all under this imperialist system, seeing all the project happening by the private sector, by the imperialist country in our imperialist power in our countries and all, and we have no benefits from it. We have a lot of things like we have no water, we have no energy, we have no health care, we have no good universities or school or all. So we start asking ourselves, like, after years of direct colonization, did we really have our independence or no? Being under this debt system. So we believe that we're still fighting for our independence. We believe that we still colonize by having all this debt. So it is more like fighting for our liberation. It's not like just any social movement or something, but it is like the main fight to achieve all the other social rights. So that's what we understand, and that's what we believe also by achieving this, that cancellation, and by have our own sovereignty, we'll be able to fix all the other problems. Yeah.
So powerful, Ralph, so powerful. Thank you. You left me speechless for a minute there. Let's get to the core of the problem here. What happened between colonialism and the debt system? How are they related? How is the debt system connected to the times of colonial empires from the 19th to beginning of the 20th century, before the revolutions, before the independence of African countries?
That's the main point, and this is the main problem, because a lot believe that after all the uprising, after all the fight for the liberation, a lot believe that African countries and most of the global South countries are independent, are not colonized. But what we saw that the colonizer country, they invest a lot of money in colonization. They send a lot of humans. They put a lot of money in this country to take their resources. But after years and after a lot of conventions, it's not possible anymore to colonize directly a country, to put an army directly in a country. So it become better for the colonizer to find another way to colonize the country.
So while we wait for him to come back, I can say like something concrete.
Please go
Uh,
on.
So on this thing on how debt is linked or how debt, because for us as debt for climate, debt it's a continuation of the colonialism. We do not use or we avoid the term neo-colonialism because it's nothing new. And this actually goes back to effectively after the former colonialism ended, Thomas Jefferson, one of the uh, fathers of the United States, said publicly in a conference, and he was referring to the indigenous leaders. He said, "Put their leaders in debt; they will always chase land to get themselves out of the debt." And later on, in 1944, at the Bretton Woods Conference, the IMF, International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank were formed so they can continue this system. So
Thank
yeah.
you.
We have a great example how the internet is and how all the sector are in Africa and all. So even the internet is not working here. So I was saying that the colonizer countries start thinking about another way how we can take the resources without losing money, without losing humans, without investing a lot of money. So here we start talking about like the new kind of colonialism, the imperialism, the indirect colonization. So
As you just
Yeah.
said, this is exactly what we're looking at. That
Yeah.
from debt for climate, in Africa can't even access effective, the Wi-Fi and internet.
Yeah, it's a tragic state. Let's move on and move on to Scarlett. Rauf, give me a sign when if you are there, if you're coming back. Scarlett, are you with me?
Yes, I'm right here.
Right there. So Scarlett, let's talk about FFD4 because you are at the core of organizing the field there, the actions in the streets. How is civil society organizing for FFD4? What does it look like?
Well, as we were saying on the intro, it looks busy because there are so this process was going on for 25 years, right? So that means the civil society it's already having an eye and getting involved into the negotiations. And the last round of negotiations this year brought a lot of frustration and angriness within the civil society. So there are many things that are going to happen in Sevilla. And we will start with a few digital actions that are happening right now in the leads up to the FFD because the process is still open, right? So we are trying to put pressure on the leaders and the negotiators to have a more ambitious outcome, but it doesn't look great at the moment. So before the actual conference from the 27th until 29th of June, the whole civil society engaging into the debt and financial system and the movement to for financial justice call out for global days of actions. So this will be decentralized actions all over the world, and some of our chapters are going to join these mobilizations together with our allies. And then in Sevilla, on the 28th of this month is going to be the Pride March, and we're going to have a depth block. So basically, everyone or our allies are going to stay in the same place with our messages. And then on the 29th, there's gonna be a big march that it's organized by the local civil society in Spain, together with civil society organizations. So these are NGOs. There's gonna be also a feminist forum, and Ali will participate together with other people that are not in the podcast. And civil society organizations are also organizing a forum in Sevilla before the actual financing for development conference. So keep an eye on the social media. You're gonna have all the information there. And then from our side, as Deb for Climate, we will host a space between the 3rd of this month until 3. We have an amazing location with our allies from Glasgow Action Team and our local allies that are a collective called L'Anonyma.
Sorry, Scarlett, I have to interrupt. Do you mean the 30th of this month, right? The 30th of June?
Yes,
Right.
30th.
So
So
between June 30 to July 3, during the main conference, we will also have an event. Scarlett, go on.
yes, so this will be an alternative space because people are going to attend the conference, and Alicia and Rauf also have accreditation together with other the for climate members, and then they're gonna get out of that probably frustrated and upset because the negotiations are not leading anywhere. We're not having any real outcome or positive outcome from that conference.
It is a most likely scenario. That's correct. Yes.
Yeah. So then we're hosting our amazing alternative space that is still, we got a little bit blocked on debating the name because we also have to take into consideration translation that doesn't make sense for the local community. So yeah, we're gonna sort that out.
Can we invite the audience to suggest some names?
Yeah, sure. I mean, please go ahead. Yeah, so on this space, we want to host panels and debates and workshops. And some of the themes that we are proposing are debt audits, because, yeah, this is our alternative, our counter proposal to the proposals that are coming out of the FFDs. Debt, extractivism, and climate crisis. So we're going to go a little bit more in depth of what Ali was saying earlier. Debt and colonialism, because we are in Spain, so we need to talk the talk, right? Then austerity measures and how this affects everyone. And this is more focused on the local communities because Spain is in process of having the most aggressive austerity measures that are pushed on them by the European Union. Debt and militarism and forced displacement because again Spain and has like a very toxic relationship on the Gibraltar I don't know the word, sorry, you know what I mean. Gender, depth swaps, and then, yeah, this space is a collective space where other collectives can also come and have their own workshops and their own their own activities. And after these talks, we will have cultural activities, so like concerts and movie screening. So yeah, also have some creativity. And then in terms of actions, we cannot disclose what is going to happen, but we can share that some of the messages that we want to put out are rejecting the debt swaps, of course. So something in the line, don't swap your debts, audit them. We also thinking about putting out an anti-colonial message. And we are thinking about targeting the heads of states, especially the European ones that are not coming in Sevilla, But we have some news that maybe Macron and Ursula are gonna come, so it will not make sense. No, they are main targets for us because of their position in the negotiations. So I don't know
So what do
if
you, excuse me, Scarlett, on this question, what do you expect from Europe, from Macron and Ursula von der Leyen? Macron is the president of France, Ursula von der Leyen is the president of the European Commission. What do you expect from Europe at this conference? What is the current position of France, for example?
you mean what I would like them to do or what they are actually doing or
What they are, let's say, let's start with what they are actually doing and what we would like them to do after.
Well, France and Macron have a brilliant idea, and I'm being sarcastic here, on what the solution should be because the African Union it's calling, and many countries in the global south are calling for this UN Convention on Debt. The alternative that France came up with is we're not going to put that in place. Instead, we are going to host a dialogue in Paris that will be hosted by France and Paris Club and overview or watch or observed by the IMF and the World Bank, and we can continue the discussion on the debt and the financial system there. And of course, private creditors are also part of hosting this dialogue. So yeah, a very false solution, a very colonialist proposal, if you ask me. And unfortunately, this is also supported by the Spanish government because the discussion on the negotiation on the debt paragraph, debt section were very tension. So because they didn't want it to deal with the tension, they didn't want it to listen to the African Union proposal, they came up with this very false solution. So
Thank you,
that
Scarlett. Thank you very much. And I think we can move on to Raouf. It's a good point because Raouf came back and we just started to talk about Africa. Raouf, are you with us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Raouf, can you tell us a little bit about this proposition from African countries, from the African Union, right?
Yeah. So it depends on the country and it depends on the proposition of activists and of government. When you follow the proposition, you understand that there are a lot of meanings, at least for people or for government. They understand in a different way the word development. A lot believe that development is just making money. What we're seeing from some government is that proposing like to fix the market, to take more loan with more facility, working more on the partenariat between the private sector and the public sectors. But on the other hand, we're seeing some other proposition like give more, like stop giving loans for the climate finance, and instead of that, to give real money to pay really for the climate finance. And we saw some country like going to propose this in the FFD. On the other hand, we're seeing some countries like Angola, which is leading now the African financial stability. They started what it called Africa Financial Stability Mechanism.
Can you
It's
can you repeat can you repeat slowly? Can you repeat slowly?
African Financial Stability Mechanism. They want to make like a fund, it's a regional debt stabilization fund. Angola expected to start it with 3 billion in capital, and they want to give loans with better condition and all. But it's still loan, I mean, and we're seeing some countries asking for debt swap also. They believe that by giving or by selling their debt to the other country in exchange of doing some project and to be indebted to just one country, it will make it fix the problem. But we're not seeing many talking about the illegality or that the debt are illegitimate, or at least talking about the debt cancellation. So we're seeing some proposition, and for our countries, like in Africa now, Chad, for example, announced the national strategy. They're requesting 3 billion in investment, private sector and public sector, etc., but still asking for loan. Yeah, Zambia is facilitating this year with Mexico, Norway, and Nepal, but we're not seeing much of pressure on them. And we're afraid about the division between the African country because the global north now are blocking everything. And even if we made some good decision, I mean, there is no, how to say, like, a legal obligation to respect that. So the country, they can make, like, we can make a decision, but they can just escape from doing that. And we've seen that before. We've seen that in Addis Ababa. We've seen that in many other events. In COP, for example, not just the FFD. So
Right.
we need to do more pressure on our
So
countries and on the
you
FFD because, yeah.
you mentioned something very important here is the legal obligation, right? I think the word is binding, and I'm looking at Alicia. I think it's a binding clause. Is that the right
Mhm.
word, Alicia?
S- So, did you mean the
Like
convention?
like a binding convention, right? Is that what is the correct term for this? Like when the country is legally obliged to follow it?
Legally binding.
Legally binding. Thank you. That was the right term.
Uh-huh.
Rauf,
Thank you so much.
this debt convention here, it would give more power to the United Nations by giving it legally binding authority. Is that right?
Can you repeat? Sorry.
Yes. The idea of this debt convention would give more power to the United Nations because it would give legally binding authority over debt. Is that correct?
Well, we hope so because, um, like strong country like the US or all the global north countries, they can escape from any kind of convention. They can just leave it. Like we saw the US did that with the COP conventions and all. So I think more important is to focus on the African country to be united together and to defend themselves together and to create a kind of financial system between them to protect themselves instead of just waiting for something from the global north. I mean, we can, as an activist, also because we have a space in the FFD, we need to put pressure on them. We need to go there and we will be there. But we need also to understand that it's our decision also, because talking about FFD and talking about the UN event, this kind of events and all, it's, I mean, we have the chance because we don't have this kind of quota. Like if you gave more money, you have more votes or something. It's the
Which
same
is
for
which is not the case at the IMF level, right? At the IMF, the
exactly.
like rich countries have all the power, right?
Exactly. As this case, I mean, a lot of people say that they respect the IMF and World Bank because they are defending very well the country who are giving them money. Like, if you give more money, you have more vote and more voice. But for the UN, they're all the same. So we are the majority, the Global South. The African Union is the majority. The G77 is the majority. So if we find a way how to be together and to take a decision together, because we're seeing a possibility to make some victory in the FFD, and it happened before in the first FFD, like in Monterrey, like they talked about the common responsibility or the shared responsibility of for development and the global north. They need to support the development in the global south. We saw also in Addis Ababa about the tax justice. So maybe this year we can talk and we can find a space talking about the debt and the debt cancellation and how we can change this debt system and how we can make it work better for us, because for now we're seeing all this kind of club like Club of Paris and others giving all this high interest to the country, and like they don't care about the problems you have, they don't care about people, they only care about money and all. So for us at African country, we need to understand that um, even we're not in the same situation or we don't have the same goal, at least for the FFD, maybe we can do something together and to avoid this kind of division between us. And this is what we are seeing the Global North is trying to do.
Hmm. Thank you, Rauf. Yes, exactly. That is summarizing the situation and the struggle for FFD. Lorraine, thank you for waiting. I know you're busy.
It's okay.
Appreciate that.
Thank you so much. It's
Uh,
really interesting to listen to. Wow.
I think it's great to take some step back a little bit when we are so busy doing like the actual work, and yeah, hearing the whole story from each other is actually good.
I just wanted to
So
add on to
yeah,
Rose.
go on, please.
What I do see, regardless of the outcome, that has of FFD4, what it has done is put the fire in the belly of many of the debt allies and climate and social justice organizations. So it's given us this spirit, regardless of what that outcome is, to really fight hard for our demands. So it's kind of, even though there are endless meetings, it's got us so much more involved, and that is a positive side of whatever outcome is happens at the FFD. So yeah, I just wanted to add that aspect.
Yeah, very good point. Very good point. Now, you are deeply involved in organizing with civil society at a global level, Lauren. How does it look like when we're trying to gather all these different struggles all together? Do you see like a common message emerging from this?
Yeah, well, there's this overarching network that exists that has been dealing with FFD4. It is the civil society FFD mechanism. It's an open platform, which, from just their website has got like 800 organizations and networks. And so they self-organize into like thematic work streams, and delegations that will be sent to FFD4 would cover like support, debt, tax, systematic reform, climate, feminism and gender issues, trade, and private finance. So when we look at summarizing what the common message that they have through these work streams is one which is what we are really fighting hard for with amongst our debt allies, is a fair and transparent debt restructuring process that is under the UN, called a UN Debt Framework Convention. There is also, which, there are so many different elements, of course, for us at Debt for Climate, we are not plugged into. And, I go into these meetings, and there's many conversations about tax, because they're also asking for a binding UN Framework Convention on international tax cooperation to end corporate tax dodging, which, is a major issue. And there's, more, specific aspects of like private finance and de-risking and encouraging more public investment. And there's demands regarding gender justice and women's human rights.
Let's talk a little
Also,
bit about that. Let's talk a little bit about gender justice here, because maybe just help us quickly a little bit connect the dots between gender equality and debt. Maybe just on that, if you can.
well, the aspect around the gender issues. I mean, what they're asking for, they're laying out the feminist principles that kind of include that, unpaid care, and domestic work is part of an economic infrastructure. Like the gender impact, embedding these assessments into debt frameworks, and yeah, reorientating like finance, towards, gender issues. I mean, there's many authors out there that have connected the dots with debt and feminism that can do it far better than what I can. But it's been an interesting aspect to see within this demand, because I know that even the UK has even tried to water down those aspects, which is really quite shameful. I mean, most of our global north governments have watered down many of these parts that I've just, these kind of united demands, they've watered them down greatly. You know, like
Scarlett, you wanted to intervene?
Yeah, a little bit on this relationship and why it's important to address the gender. It's because there are a lot of there's a lot of labor work that is done by mostly women that is not remunerated and they don't get compensation or that doesn't contribute to their taxes and their health system and so on. Then there are cases in which women are suffering more because of the debt, right? I think there are still 6 million women that are getting less pay by doing the same work that a man is doing. So that needs to be addressed. And also there are cases in which in most African countries, the men are going to work on the mines and so on, and then the women stay home and they are traveling far to bring water and they get killed or raped or aggressed on the way. So that's why it's important to have this language in the draft paper, and it's important to address this. But as Lorraine said, it's getting very watered down, the whole paragraph on the gender.
Alicia?
Yes, and also I think that a way to summarize I mean, the connections between gender and debt is that whenever the state start to get diminished, like less state for public services such as health, water and sanitation, food, etc., then it is the unpaid care work of women and also gender diversities that fill in those gaps. So it's basically this unpaid care work, which is like I don't know how to say it in English, but in Spanish it's like amortiza. It's like I mean, they are the ones that fill in the gaps when the state is not there because of debt, because of prioritizing the payment of debt. So it's important to take that in mind, because then this leads to gender inequality and less time of women and gender diversities to dedicate to other activities, for example, political organization.
Thank you. Absolutely. What we are doing right now, right? Exactly. Lauren, I have a question about the elephant in the room.
hello, yeah. I just wanted to go back to that point because I was trying to think of Lucy Cavarillo's book on that she wrote, a feminist reading of debt, and it's a book that we do cover in our reading club.
What's the name of the book? The name of the book?
Feminist Reading of Debt by Lucy Cavarillo and Veronica Riego, but I'm sure that I'm butchering that Spanish.
Let's plug in
Lucy
this reading book.
What
Alicia,
is
can you
it,
tell us?
Ali? Lucy Cavarillo.
Lucy Caballero and Verónica Gago.
Yeah, thank
And
you.
you are reading this in your reading group?
Yeah, the Debt for Climate reading group comes back to this book because it is such a powerful book, just reiterating all kind of the aspects that Ali and Scarlett has.
How can I join this reading group, this amazing reading group, if I want to?
Oh, if you want to join our reading group, you can head to any of our social media platforms. If you head to Debt for Climate Instagram, it's one of the pinned posts, and we have a Signal group that discusses the readings. So if anyone would like to join, just head to Instagram, pop us a DM, and we'll add you to the Signal group, and you can join the reading. It's run by the global coordinator who resides in Mexico. The global coordinator for
And
ABIA.
you have actually an English and a Spanish group, right?
We do. She's done an amazing work with this.
Absolutely amazing. Yes, exactly. Lauren, the elephant in the room I want to talk about is America and Trump, right? What is the position? What do we expect from what is the country that is still the largest financial superpower in the world? Like, but yeah, it's a disaster. But what are we looking at, Lauren?
It is a disaster with the US, and we didn't really expect too much for them at the FFD4, and they shot off a statement just a couple of months ago at the intersessional outcome, which I'll read in
what does that mean, intersessional?
It's one of the prep meetings. There has been a whole, it's, trying to understand the whole UN process has been a task in itself. It's so convoluted. So there was all these prep meetings that lead up to the actual outcome of the conference of the Finance for Development 4. So at one of these meetings, they came out and had a statement, and I'll read a quote from this. It said, in particular, the United States reiterates that we cannot accept text that calls for a UN intergovernmental process on debt, or proposes a role for the UN in the global debt architecture, for which it is neither mandated nor equipped. We also stress that this process should not address issues such as financial regulation or seek to intervene in the role of regulators. And so they already led the way that they are completely opposed to this, UN debt, debt framework convention, which is, as I've mentioned before, it's a more fair and transparent debt restructuring process. And they also wanted to delete many paragraphs, and what the civil society was looking at, that they then just continue to reserve any opinion on the discussions. They weren't engaging with it at all. And they've even called to remove any reference to climate change. So yeah, the US has sat there, and we know now from the outcome that they have come forward and addressed nearly every single paragraph in that document to reject the calls. So yeah, not only the US, Scarlett covered the EU. It's with the UK. We don't even know who will be attending from the UK. They have followed suit really closely on EU heels about pushing back on this debt convention. There is, like many organizations here in the UK with, high level advocacy staff that has met with, like the UK FCDO, which is the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, at every opportunity. And all the answers continue to be really vague. As I said, only yesterday, a letter that Bond put together, is an agency here in the UK, part of the civil society. They put a letter together which had over 80 UK NGOs, non-government organisations, demanding that Keir Starmer attends the FFD and to actually stop blocking any meaningful debt discussion. So, when we talk about US being the elephant in the room, it's a lot of global North countries that are really pushing hard to stop this convention. They still want it to remain exactly where it is, in the hands of the IMF, in the hands of private creditors.
And the war is not helping, isn't it? Like conflict everywhere is not helping.
No,
with,
not at all.
Right.
Can
you explain? Yeah, go on.
Yeah, so with Trump in, he obviously, what he did was cut aid tremendously. And because of the support that he wavered on for Ukraine, the UK government immediately cut its aid too, so that it could just continue giving to the war machine. So we literally cut development aid to global South countries just so that we could give it, so we could spend it on more arms for Ukraine. This is happening elsewhere. This is public money that that is just being fed into arms and war. It's shameful.
Scarlett?
Yeah, I just want to add that they are using this excuse with the cuts because they also cut the budget of the United Nations with 20%, and now they are saying that the United Nations doesn't have enough budget to actually put the mechanism of a debt convention in place. So they decided to make the cuts and now are using this as an excuse to not allow the UN convention to be formed because, we don't have money for that. but we do have money for war, as Lorraine said. And I remember Ali was saying us after one of the meetings within the civil society mechanism, that in all the spaces, the European Union pushes for this narrative of militarization, of we need to protect ourselves, so we will invest more. How you call it, Ali? War machine or what? I don't remember exactly.
War machine
War,
was the expression.
Yeah,
do,
the
uh, do, war machine, yes. But yeah, I don't know if you were referring that like the European, I mean the global North in general is preparing for a war economy for, during the FFD, and that's why, and yeah, to feel more, to direct more money to arms and wars instead of public services.
Which is, yes, go on, please. Sorry, go
Sorry,
on.
Anton, that was the word that I was looking for, war economy.
I just
Yes,
want
and
to just
Lauren,
pack in,
please,
yeah. I
please.
just want to pop back to say that one of the things that being especially based in the UK is one of the things that the FFD and like the CSOs have really been pushing is supporting domestic legislation on debt. And you know, this is like we're really pushing in the UK, led by Debt Justice and other organisations, this new debt justice law, because it comes at such a surprise that like over 90% of private creditors' contracts come through UK legislation. And it is exactly the same. I know it's crazy. It's exactly the same in the US. And so this just, you know, this law will stop private creditors to be able to just bring about the like interest rates that they instruct. There will be a lot more tightened regulations about suing countries, which is what they're doing right now. There are Standard Charter, you know, I think suing, is it Ghana? I
Now,
can't.
just to clarify, I think I see what you're talking about, but this is basically Debt Justice UK supporting a law that is being proposed. Is that correct?
Yes. They're
Okay,
supporting a
and
law.
that law will actually make it more difficult for private creditors to attack countries to sue countries in
Yes.
payment, right?
Yes, absolutely. And just hot off the press here from the policy director, Debt Justice, is that, as I just mentioned, this is not only in the UK that many of these contracts go through, it's also through New York. And there is a bill in New York called the Champety Bill. So it's very similar to like this this debt justice law that they're trying to bring about. And I'll just read this out for ease because it's an email. And the New York Champety Bill is facing its annual deadline to pass or not pass the New York Assembly. Champety is the part that would reintroduce a ban on purchasing debt solely with the intention of suing, because this is what some people actually do. Just as you should look into Paul Singer. He would buy up debt for countries just so that he could sue. And there is a Bloomberg article. And what's most interesting about this, because obviously, IMF are looking at these FFD for discussions, and they still don't actually admit that there is a major debt crisis, but they're slowly eking their way. And so this is the most useful bit for this quote from the IMF. This bill could contribute to the ongoing international efforts to support orderly and predictable debt restructuring processes by reducing incentives for disruptive vulture fund litigations with a laudable goal. So we can see that the FFD4, the discussions are all going awry, but in the background, they want to make sure that they look like they are doing something. And even in the meetings, the CSO meetings, we know that the UK and the EU will still say that there is some sort of win, regardless of the fact that none of the demands that have been made by the civil society has actually been met. There will still be points like, they will call they're calling for debt swaps. They will call that a success. They're going for pause clauses, which is where, a country could have some traumatic incident, whether it's, earthquake or climate, related, and they can stop then the debt repayments. But that's only, well, they can stop the debt repayments, but not the interest on those. So you can see that there is a lot of background work on where they want to try and support it in their own little way. But this is the conference that should be the one where these decisions are made. It has already been, touted of being the conference of survival, and it's going to be really interesting to see from what happens at the outcome to, there's a webcast tonight on the outcome of this document and what the demands are.
What is
So
this
yeah,
outcome document there? Maybe I will ask Alicia on this. What are we expecting tonight? What is going on tonight? If you can explain it in a simple way.
Yes, so what has happened is that over the last weekend in New York there have been negotiations of the text, like the last bits of negotiations, and the co-facilitators have tried to like listen to everyone and build a document that can hopefully be adopted by consensus according to them. However, the document in the debt section it has very diluted language. For example, the UN Convention is almost basically gone. It is the paragraph reads like to have an intergovernmental process that recommends ways to treat the debt, but like it's for recommendations, and that is already being done on the second committee of the UN General Assembly. So yeah, the language is very, very much diluted, and also it includes the false solution of having this dialogue with the Paris Club, the creditors, the IMF, the World Bank. So basically, the high expectations that came from civil society are all gone by now. And what will happen today, actually, I think now, is that in New York, there is this last meeting where they will I mean, the text is already there. There's the final draft. So what can happen are four options. One is for it to be adopted by consensus, which may not happen because there are some bits that the EU is not happy with. They, for example, don't want to have the word intergovernmental there. They don't want an intergovernmental process at all. The second option is for this to be voted on. So yeah, if because consensus is that everyone agrees, and if not, it needs to be voted on. Probably countries like the U.S. or Argentina voting against. Third option is for countries to ask for amendments during this meeting, but it's a small time for that. I mean, it's 3 hours. But yeah. And the fourth option is to leave the document open until Sevilla, which can give some opportunity, some chance to have to push forward the more progressive stances, but can also risk diluting the text even more. So yes, basically those are the four possible scenarios that we're expecting today. And according to that, we will need to check what will be the best strategy.
Well, we will see. We'll see in the end where it goes. But for us, I think there is a very clear course of action. Is that this UN conference is one of the last bastion of peace, right? One of the last places where we can actually talk and try to solve problems together, which is a very a beautiful thing to do, I think, and especially in this time. So I will be looking forward to this event, no matter the outcome, to be honest, because the process itself is a beautiful thing. Now, any last word maybe before we close up, because we are dangerously close to 7 o'clock and our next meeting. Yes, I remember. Rauf, maybe any word?
Um, yeah, I mean, so far myself, I lost uh, like believing in the UN and all of its event because of everything have been said. But at the same time, I feel it's a very important space to be there and to meet people who are trying to make a change. And for us, we shouldn't let any empty space fighting for our demand and for the debt cancellation. What I can say that talking about debt cancellation is not something radical. At least maybe for some people it's radical, but for us, we see something very important and we see it something fair to talk about it. Because so far, most of the debt are illegitimate debt. Most of them are illegal. Most of them have been taken by a dictator government without any permission from the people of this country, and they wasn't used to make some social change or to help people or something. They've been used like in the wrong space. So we see them like an illegal debt. And talking about debt swap when the debt is legitimate doesn't make any sense. So that's why we're talking about debt cancellation, and that's what we are trying to do in the FFD. We will try to mobilize for that. We are refusing the debt swap, and let's try to make some change.
Thank you, Ralph. Yes, absolutely. Scarlett, any last words?
If you are listening to us from Spain or even better from Sevilla, please join us. Regardless the outcome of tonight, regardless the outcome of the decisions, we must put pressure, and the message is this is not over. We are not accepting your full solution. We're gonna unify all the voices. We're gonna come together, and we're gonna be more than you.
Lauren?
Yeah, just to follow on that, there is, there is so much happening around the FFD4, and there are many organizations that have come together to put together like a global days of action, which Scarlett touched upon like earlier on, which covers the CSO Forum March. So, if you are on social media, please do go hunt out for the Pay Up, Cancel the Debt, Change the System campaign, where many organizations are coming together to push for these demands. And there will be, as I say, global days of action on the 27th and the 28th. So do reach out to Debt for Climate or anyone on those Instagram organization accounts to see how you can support that.
Scarlett?
I forgot to mention something really, really nice that is going to happen in Sevilla, and we are part of that. There's going to be an exhibition on debt row. It's called. It's an art exhibition on debt and its impact on global South lives. This is going to happen from the 29th June until 1st July at AC Hotel Sevilla Forum. And we're also going to post on social media as well. And there's going to be a talk as well with a former UN independent expert on debt and human rights, Juan Pablo Bohoslavsky. I hope I'm pronouncing that relatively okay. And also the exhibition, the Zero Home, from Jairo Alvarez. And we will have our own artworks created by Bikini Wax. It's the collective of one of our amazing coordinators, Dianix from Mexico. So yeah, please join the exhibition and the talk there. It's open to the public.
Ali, to close up?
Yes, well, I agree. I mean, we have lost much faith in the UN at this moment, not just for the debt issues, but also for the current geopolitical state and all the wars happening, all the lives being lost. I just feel that it's important to be present in these spaces to also radicalize the narrative, place this into the state of, well, what are our stances, anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, anti-colonialist stances, and hopefully get more people to be radicalized and see this in a way that we need to end colonialism by ending debt. So yeah, it's important to join these actions to show solidarity with things that have been planned for Sevilla, and be strong, be the strong voice that we need as social movements against this bloody capitalist system.
Wow, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you everyone for coming. So see you next time and see you at the conference in Seville or online on social media. Bye-bye.
Great.
Bye.
And
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Ata.
Thank
adios.
you.